San Diego, MAPS coach. And so today we're going to be talking about baby boomer listings. And so I've been, just a little bit of background before we jump into it. I've been working here in San Diego on Chris Heller's team for the last 12 years as his listing partner. Working with baby boomers, working with seniors is a big part of our business. And it's something that we're very passionate about as well. The reason being is because for those of you that don't know, the population is aging. In fact, when you look at it, the senior age group is for now the first time the largest in regards to percentage of the population here in the United States that it's ever been, right? If you've ever heard it dubbed the silver tsunami, it's very accurate. That's what we're seeing out there. Now, here's what I want you guys to understand. We're going to be talking about two distinct groups today on this call. We're going to be talking about baby boomers, right? And so for those of you that don't know, those are people that are defined being born between 1946 and 1964. And then we're also going to be talking about their parents, which are the seniors, all right? Don't collapse the two. Baby boomers and seniors are not the same. They're two distinct groups. In fact, seniors are dubbed as the greatest generation, all right? Now, what you have to understand, baby boomers are the children of seniors, all right? And who do you think helps seniors make decisions? Their children, the baby boomers. And that's what we're going to be talking about. In fact, on this webinar today, I'm going to share with you what we think are the three most exciting opportunities, listing opportunities, right? That's the best part about it. We're talking about listing opportunities that exist with this, the largest portion of the population in the United States. And what's even better is that it's also the wealthiest percentage of the population, right? The seniors and their children, the baby boomers, have more money than the rest of the population combined. So for those of you that are excited about millennials, that want to go get online and go figure out how to capture millennial business, well, guess what? They're broke. Do you remember what Gary said in the Vision speech at Family Reunion? And he's been saying it year after year. They come out of college racked with debt, and they don't value home ownership, all right? And they most of the time don't have the money to buy homes anyway. So why not focus on what we know are the wealthiest group, which are the seniors and the baby boomers? And what's interesting is that they control more than 3/4 of the wealth in the United States. And guess where you think most of their money is tied up? That's right, it's in real estate. All right, so on the call, here are the three groups that we're going to be talking about today, or the three listing opportunities. We're going to be talking about probate and trust listings and why they are an awesome source of business. We're going to be talking about what we call the senior transition program. In other words, the opportunity that exists when a senior has to sell their family home in order to move into retirement living. We're going to talk about that. And then the third thing we're going to talk about is your professional referral networks. So in other words, who are some other professionals just like us, right, that come into contact with people that have real estate need on a daily basis, and are they referring that business to you? So the CPAs, the attorneys, insurance providers, money managers, they all have clients with real estate needs. The question is, are they referring them to you? And then lastly, I'm going to leave you with the most important part of the program. I'm going to be leaving you with what we call your value proposition. So in other words, when you're meeting with a baby boomer or a senior and you're talking about probate or the transition, or you're meeting with an attorney because you want referral business, what's your value proposition? I'm going to go through that with you, and that's the last thing we do on today's call. Question, will this be recorded and available after the call? Absolutely. The call is recorded, and you will get a copy of it after the call. Okay, so let's jump into probates. Why are they such a great source of business? All right, so let's move the slide forward. Well, first off, are you interested in a source of business that's resistant to market cycles? All right, look. It doesn't matter whether it's a seller's market, it doesn't matter whether it's a buyer's market, it doesn't matter whether interest rates are low or interest rates are high. Unfortunately, the population is aging. That means each year more and more people are passing on. And guess what? Oftentimes they have a home they need to sell. So probate and trust right now are resistant to market cycles. All right? Now, are you interested in a source of business that has no peaks or valleys? What do I mean by that? Well, if you go after expired listings, maybe you've noticed right now there aren't that many out there because the market's so hot. Everything is selling. There's peaks and valleys, right? For sub-by owners, same thing. In a hot market, you're going to see a lot of them. Yet when the market dips, not so many. Expireds and first sub-by owners have peaks and valleys. How about this? a source of business that will continue to grow each year. As I said, the seniors and their parents, or the seniors and their kids, the baby boomers, are the largest part of our population. As they age, more and more opportunities are going to present themselves. And then lastly, and the best part about this source of business, it's free. All right? It doesn't cost any money to pick up the phone and call a prospective client, right? We're not investing huge amounts of money in online lead generation with a very low conversion rate. It's a free source of business. Now, it's going to cost your time. You got to be willing to pick up the phone and make those contacts. But at the end of the day, it's a low-cost business, which is what we want. Now, I always say that for far too long, probates have been flying under the radar. And I always wonder why, right? Why do more people not talk about them? Why is it not even mentioned in the MREA? And what it comes down to is real estate agents' perceptions of probate listings, right? So real estate agents have a negative view of it. And for starters, number one, I say it's because most agents don't know where to find them, right? Where do you even go to find a probate lead? Or number two, they have an assumption that probates take forever, which is true, right? The probate process here in San Diego can take 8 months to a year, right? Yet it's a myth that you have to wait till probate is done to sell the property. It can be sold within 60 days usually. Or how about number three? Not many agents do them or talk about it, so therefore it must not be a good source of business. Agents don't talk about it because it's a secret source of business, right? We always struggle. Should we share about it or should we keep it private? Look, there's no secrets here. We want you guys to know about it. There's more than enough business for everybody. Or how about this, number four? It's an insensitive way to do business. Someone's friend, someone's loved one, someone's family member just passed away. And here we are picking up the phone, calling them on a sales call to see if we can sell a piece of real estate. Gosh, that doesn't sound very sensitive. I don't want to make that call. Good, don't. No, just kidding. I'm gonna share with you how I think the opposite is true. Or how about this? We're viewed as ambulance chasers, right? We're no better than that ambulance chasing attorney. Although in this case we'd be chasing the hearse, but right, that's what people think. Or lastly, it's complicated. There's an attorney, there's a judge, it would have to go through court, right? It must be complicated, therefore that's why agents don't do it. Look, those are just perceptions, right? So I'm going to share with you in a minute how I think the opposite of all that is actually true. But for those of you that don't know what a probate is, all probate is the first step in the legal process of administering the estate of a deceased person, resolving all claims, and distributing the deceased person's property under will. That's all probate is. In fact, probate court was established way back in the late 1700s to make sure that the government actually got their taxes, right? That was the basis of the probate court. But now they're going to make it sound a little softer. It's just to make sure that the beneficiaries of the estate fairly receive all that's due to them. That's all it is. Now, what people don't understand is that when you own real estate and you pass away, there's only two ways for that property to pass on to your beneficiaries. Either A, it's going to happen through probate court, or B, through a trust. Now here's what's interesting. What percentage of people do you think own real estate in a trust? We all know it's a good idea, and if you don't, you should connect with an estate planning attorney because it is. But the reality is what we know is less than 5% of people who own real estate actually own it in a trust. 95% of the time, when someone owns real estate and they pass away, guess where it ends up? That's right, through probate court. So are you guys seeing the opportunity? And I don't know where I saw this statistic, but I did read it once where they said more real estate flows through the probate court than all the MLS combined, right? There's a lot of property. There's a lot of opportunities that exist. Now, I want you guys to think about this because some of you might be on the call saying, well, yeah, calling someone whose, best friend or family member or parent or child just died, that's insensitive. I don't think I could do that. Well, let me share with you a different point of view. So what I want you guys to understand is that as real estate agents, we are a critical piece of the process, all right? We are a critical piece of the probate process. In fact, sometimes probate can't even be discharged unless we are part of the process, all right? So for a minute, I want you guys to take off your real estate hat, right? Pretend you're not a real estate agent, all right? Pretend you're just a normal person out there in the world living their life, all right? You've got a full life. you've got a job, career, family, activities, right? Social life, church group, whatever. All right, you're out there living your life. Now, imagine a friend of yours or a family member passes away, and you're notified that you've been appointed either in their will or by the court as the executor of the estate, and there's real property that's involved. All right? Now think about this. What if you've never sold a home before? All right? What if you've never sold a home? Or how about this? What if it's been 20 years since you've sold a real estate property or even been involved in a real estate transaction, right? The last time you had to do something, you bought a home and it was 20 years ago. Or what if you show up at that property and you open the door and, yeah, all that personal property is still there. Clothes in the closet, furniture, maybe there's a pet, there's a car in the garage, there's boxes full of paperwork and files. Now what do you do? Now, what if you show up to that property and it needs work, right? The faucet's leaking, the landscape is overgrown, the roof probably needs to be patched, the walls need to be painted, right? What if it needs work? Or how about this? What if you show up to this property and there's still people living there and you don't know who they are, right? Maybe they were tenants, maybe people just moved in, maybe it's family members, whatever. But you now have people living in that house and you've got to get them out. Or how about this? You don't even live in the same city, right? You're the executor of the estate and the real property is 1,500 miles away. You don't even live there. Now remember, you're not a real estate agent, right? We took that cap off. You're just an average person with an already busy life. And you know what's even more? The house is just one small piece of the estate. There's taxes to be filed. All right, you've got to deal with the DMV. There's medical debt. There's bills. There's bank accounts. There's investment accounts. The house is just one small piece of it. So here's a question. Do you think their attorney is going to hold their hand through the process? When was the last time you worked with an attorney? Right, look, as real estate agents, our clients expect us to hold their hands, drop their kids off at school, and walk their dog. Right? That's the level of service that our clients expect from us if they want to pay us 6%. Yet, do you think they have the same expectations on their attorney? They don't. And believe it or not, their attorneys are not holding their hands, right? Remember, these are attorneys. They don't hold people's hands, all right? So in that example, do you not think as a real estate agent, you have the education and you have the training to help with that the scenario I just described? Of course you do, right? Look, imagine it's not a probate. When you go out on a listing appointment and you show up and you look around and say, all right, we got some work to do before we put this on the market. You know what to do, right? You've got the vendors where you can say, all right, we really need to get the carpets cleaned or the carpets changed out before it goes on the market. In fact, we've got a great person. Here's who they are. Or you walk in and say, gosh, you really need a little bit of touch-up painting. In fact, we've got a great painter. I'm going to have them connect with you. Or you show up and there's a jungle in the backyard. You say, hey, we need to do something about that jungle. We need to get that trimmed down. I've got a great landscaper. Here you go. It's what you already do on your normal listing appointments. We just have to shift our mind frame, right? We just have to change the way we describe it when we're dealing with someone who's an executor on an estate, right? Imagine this. What if so you can see, right, when we go back to that example, that person who's overwhelmed, who's completely overwhelmed, right, with this process, if you, as a real estate agent who has the education, who has the training, who can help them with this project, right, if they were to get a call from you and you could effectively communicate your value to them and exactly how you could help, don't you think they'd be excited to hear from you? Yes, they would. All right, especially if they live 1,500 miles away, especially if they're completely overwhelmed, especially since their attorney is not giving them any guidance. All right, now you might be saying, well, why isn't the attorney just referring them to a real estate agent? That's a very good question, and that's why the third part of this call is going to be about your professional referral network, because for whatever reason, they don't. In fact, only a third of attorneys actually refer their clients to a real estate agent. The others let them fend for themselves. It's the oddest thing. I don't understand it, but that's the reality of it. All right? Now, in this same example, what if you were a busy attorney, right? And this was your client, and they have a home to sell, and they're not here, and they're overwhelmed. And guess what? You can't get paid as an attorney until the estate is settled and most of the wealth is tied up in the equity of that home. So you need that house sold in order to get paid. don't you think they'd be excited to hear from you, especially if you had a clearly defined value proposition where you could show them how you could take that overwhelm and you can create 5 simple steps and show them that there's sunlight at the end of the tunnel? Don't you think that attorney would be excited to hear from you? You bet, right? So that's I think the opportunity that exists with the probate leads, with the trust leads, all right? And look, in the course, we get into way more detail on how to find them, on what the scripts are, on what the appointments look like, on how we prospect the attorneys. We go through all of it. I just want you guys to be clear what the opportunity is. Now, the second opportunity I want to share with you is what we call the Senior Transition Program, all right? So this is where a senior has to sell their home, right, in order to move into a retirement living situation, all right? Now, what's interesting, right, sometimes when people hear the word retirement home, they think convalescent home. But look, there's way more options than convalescent out there. I don't know when the last time you guys went to a retirement home, but there's a couple of them here in San Diego that you walk in and they look like the Bellagio. I mean, they are that nice. And what's interesting, as the population is aging, the number of retirement homes is on the rise. In fact, everywhere I look in San Diego, it seems that there's another one being built, right? Now, there's different types of retirement living, all right? You've got independent living, where usually they have their own apartment with a little kitchen and they also have a main dining room. You have assisted living, you have skilled nursing, and you also have memory care, all right? Those are kind of the 4 big ones, all right? But all of them have opportunity for us. And what's interesting is, and again, I don't know how familiar you are with these, if you've ever had a family member that you had to help through this process, it's not cheap. Whether you're going to rent or whether some of them are a buy-in, it's not cheap to move in, right? In fact, most of them want to see that you could live there or that you have enough, you have 10 years in reserves, cash in your bank account for them to take you on as a tenant in some of these retirement homes. Now, where do you think most seniors have their wealth tied up? That's right, it's in the equity of their home. So they have to sell their house in order to move in to the retirement home. Now, this is probably the biggest challenge that sales reps have at these communities, right? Because here's what happens. And again, if you guys have been through this process, exactly what I say is exactly how it plays out. Here's what happens. So the senior, either on their own or by the urging of their family, they decide that it's finally time to go look at a retirement community, right? A retirement living option. Maybe they're just getting to that age. Maybe they've crashed their car. Maybe they've fallen and broken their hip. But it's finally clear that they can no longer live on their own in their home. It's dangerous. So they finally go and they look at a retirement home begrudgingly, right? They're not excited about it, but they finally go. Now, they get there, and lo and behold, they get excited, right? They see some friends that they know that are there. They see the activities. They maybe even see the perfect unit for them. And the fact that they have meals on demand, they went there not excited, but all of a sudden they're like, wow, this is cool. This is exciting. I've got, well, they probably don't say cool, but I've got friends here. I've got meals here. I've got social life, right? I'm fully connected. This is great. I can do this. Yet they can't move in and sign a contract until they sell their home and they've got the money to do so. So they leave there excited about the opportunity. The sales rep is excited about the opportunity. He's saying, yes, I've got a potential hot lead here. This is great. And then what happens is the senior goes back home. And then they get home and they start thinking, right? They start thinking about all of the stuff around them, all their personal property, right? And they start thinking, wait a minute, what am I going to take with me? And, what do I have to leave behind, right? And then they start thinking, well, what's going to happen with the stuff left behind? What does my family want? If there's stuff my family doesn't want, then what's going to happen with it, right? And when they get done thinking about the personal property, then they start thinking about the house itself, right? They're looking around saying, wow, it's been 40 years we've lived here. We still have shag carpet from the 70s, right? The leaky faucet has never stopped leaking. We can't put the home on the market in this condition. We're not going to get a lot of money for it. And then when they get done thinking about the house, then they start thinking about the actual logistics of making a move. Who's going to pack us up? right? How are people going to find me? Is my phone number going to change? Will I have cable, right? Crazy things. And so very quickly, their excitement turns to overwhelm, right? And then they go radio silent, right? That excited sales rep at the senior living community, he's calling them, or she's calling them, and guess what? Phone calls aren't being answered, right? It's radio silence because the senior is now overwhelmed and they're frozen. They're stuck. They can't do anything. Yet they have to move. So don't we, as real estate agents, have the education and the training to help in the process of that senior moving, right? Do we not know what it takes to get a home into selling condition? Do we not know what to do if someone has too much stuff and how to coordinate them with an estate sale, with a garage sale, with donation, with a haul away service, right? Can we not act as the concierge, if you will, or create a concierge type program where we can handle it from start to finish so that the senior doesn't become overwhelmed? They remain excited. We do. We can do that. And in fact, again, in the last few minutes, I'm going to share with you exactly what that 5-step program looks like. I'm going to go through that value proposition with you. But that's the opportunity that exists. And I'll tell you what, look around, open your eyes. You will be surprised at how many retirement living communities there are in your area that you had no idea about. They need your help. All right. Now, lastly, I want to share with you about the professional referral network. So I want you to be clear, there's other professionals out there that come into contact with people that have real estate needs. The question is, are they referring them to you? So think about this, all right? When we, as a real estate agent, when we sell a buyer a home, would it be a good idea for them to put it into a trust, right? Let's say they're married, let's say maybe they have a few kids, right? Would it be a good idea to now take their estate and put it into a trust? The answer is yes, all right? Yet, when that deal closes, do we call up an estate attorney and say, hey, I just closed the deal, it's a young family, they need a trust, here's their information, call them? No, right? We don't do that. Why? Because we're busy, right? That deal closes, we've moved on to the next deal, the next fire, the next whatever. Attorneys are no different, right? If an attorney, and what's interesting though, is if an attorney, if they were to call us each week, each month, and say, hey, just want to check in, do you have any clients that you're working with right now that could use a trust? You know, we'd probably be able to say, yeah, in fact, we do. We've got a great family we're working with, and you know, they're definitely going to need some help on the estate planning side. Yet, they don't call us either. See, that's my point. There's a huge missed opportunity out there for an exchange of referrals between us and other professionals. And the only reason it's not happening is because people are busy. We're too busy, right? Look, Gary Keller says all the time, people are not born with a referral gene. People don't wake up and say, I wonder who I can refer to my real estate agent today. Yet, if you were to call that busy attorney each week, each month, and ask them, hey, who did you come across this week that has a real estate need I can help with? Don't you think they probably have someone? You bet, right? If you were to call your CPA, it's tax season. You know they're coming across people that are doing their taxes saying, gosh, we should really sell this house, right? Don't you think he or she would probably have some referrals for you? You bet. Money managers, right? They've got people moving money in and out of different investments all the time. In fact, if you were to ask most attorneys, look, divorce attorneys, bankruptcy attorneys, all sorts of attorneys have opportunities for you. And what's interesting is when you talk to most estate planning attorneys, right? Attorneys that manage wills and trusts and all that good stuff. Where do you think most of their business comes from? Do you think it comes from ads in the yellow pages? No. It comes from referrals from other professionals, right? Most attorneys get their referrals from CPAs, from financial planners, from money managers. That's where they get their referral business, right? We, as real estate agents, for whatever reason, just aren't part of that process because we're not picking up the phone, making contact, and asking for the business. I already told you at the beginning that only 1/3 of attorneys actually refer their clients to a real estate agent because most of the time, A, they either think it's not their job to make the referral, or B, they just don't know of anyone who can manage it or who can handle it or who has the knowledge to do so. Yet if you were to call them up, sit down with them, and share with them what you can do to help, they'd probably be pretty excited. In fact, I know they will because we do it all the time. So now what I want to do is I want to share with you your value proposition, all right? And this is this is what we use when we're talking to potential probate leads. It's what we use when we're talking to seniors that are making the transition. It's what we talk to the sales reps at the retirement communities when we go and meet with them. It's what we're talking to other attorneys, CPAs, financial planners about. This is our value proposition, because if you're just another agent, right, who's calling for their business, who, yes, you're a great agent, you know how to take care of seniors, you have your SRES, it means nothing. All right, it all means nothing. They want to know what you can do to help their clients besides you're a great agent. All right, when you can call and let them know that you have a simple 5-step plan, now all of a sudden you have something to sell, right? You're not just a great agent, you actually have a 5-step plan to take them from clean out to closing, right? To take them to manage the transition, right? To take care of their clients. And here's what that 5-step plan looks like. Because in all the examples I gave you, the common thread is people are overwhelmed and they don't know where to begin, right? There's personal property, there's the house itself, there's logistics involved. People just are on overwhelm and they don't know where to begin, and they're busy in their own life. They don't have time to figure it out. So here's the 5-step plan. All right, step number 1 is the initial consultation. This is where we're going to go meet with the client and any of their relevant family members, because you never meet with a senior without their adult children present. Unless you want to open yourself up for elder abuse, you never meet with a senior without their adult children present, or if they have a pastor or a priest or a rabbi or a social worker, somebody, right? You're going to meet with them, any relevant family members, any beneficiaries, right? And you're going to do the initial consultation. You're going to look at the home, you're going to talk about what's happening in the market, you're going to talk about what you can do to help, and set some time frames. That's step number 1. Step number 2, I call getting organized. This is where you're going to figure out what, and if you're doing the transition, what the senior's taking with them versus what's being left behind. Or on a probate, this is where you're figuring out what the family is going to keep versus what they want to get rid of. All right, that's step number 2. It's called getting organized. It's where they figure out what they're going to keep versus what they're going to let go of. Step 3, I call taking inventory. Step 3 is where you take all the stuff that they want to let go of, that they don't want to keep, and that's where you figure out what's going to happen with it. And this is the progression. Number 1, you could do an estate sale. If there's not enough value, number 2, you can do a garage sale. Plenty of people who host garage sales. Number 3, you can do donation. Or number 4, haul away, right? You're just going to get rid of all the stuff. You're going to liquidate it, all right? That's step number 3, take an inventory. Step number 4, I call preparing the home for sale. This is where if anything needs to happen to the home, whether it needs carpet or paint or landscaping, etc. Step 4 is when we're going to take care of the actual house itself. And lastly, step 5, you market and sell the property. All right. Now, I didn't explain anything novel to you guys, but what you do is when you have a 5-step program, when you can put it in logical order for someone who's overwhelmed, or an attorney who knows their clients are overwhelmed and don't know where to start, and you can say, hey, I've got a simple 5-step program to take them from clean out to closing. Here's what I do. Here's what it looks like. They look at it like, oh my gosh, this is novel. Well, really, it's what we already do. We just have to be able to explain it in a way where they see the value. All right, and that's your value proposition when working with seniors, with baby boomers, with the transition, and with your professional referrals. All right, so guys, if you want to learn more about the program, if you want to sign up for the program, good news, it starts next Monday. And it's a 16-week course, right, where we give you our full playbook on the probates, on the senior transition, on the professional referral network. All right, it's 16 courses. It starts on Monday. They're all recorded for playback. If you like what you heard today, hopefully you'll sign up. I look forward to seeing you on the calls. If not, thank you for joining us today. You will get a recording of this, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the future. See you, everybody.